All right. So the first thing I want to say is hello and welcome. Lots of you guys are new to the accelerator. You are new to me and my work, and you probably have no clue who I am. So if you have not met me yet before, hello, my name is Dianna. I work as an intergalactic bridge to bring all of those huge existential concepts here into our grounded reality. I am also somebody who teaches quantum healing, and I work in a very wide array of spaces when it comes to working with ETs and extraterrestrials. At this time, one of the things that is most prevalent in my work is that I tend to get these really big downloads about what's coming next in terms of the earth shifts, and then I start teaching it, sharing it, and giving all of my students the tools to ground it into their reality so that they can be part of Team Earth Mission 2021. So that's kind of a little bit about what I do, and if you guys have questions about it, please ask. And the best one to ask about what I do is honestly my students. It's really hard to encapsulate everything into a short little sentence, but the other thing you guys will get to know about me in a very short amount of time, spending any time with me, is that I am a big believer in never getting to a conclusion. So this is something that a lot of people feel differently about, but for me, the instant we get to that space where we think we know everything or we have the answers to just every single question on the planet, we don't know anything. And so for me, my space that I come from is here's my current vantage point and my experiences, my points of view, but what else is possible? How much further can we go? If we ask the right question here, what else would we unlock? And that's kind of leading us into today's topic. A lot of times, the way that many of us have been brought in to this world of asking, are we a starseed? Am I something more than just this human? Am I here to be a part of this shift? Like, what is this? We kind of get brought in with this conception of there's a container I have to jump into, and there's this role, and there's this specific mission, and I have to go chasing and hunting and finding this out. And we're never really taught how to ask the questions that unlock us and get us from where we are right here to how we get over there. And if I take that and I look at many of the things you guys talked about in the thread today about, what we're afraid of when it comes to ETs, many of us just don't know the right questions to ask or how to step forward and actually communicate with them in such a way that we feel like it's going to be helpful. So I want to address these types of things as we go. Oh, sweet. Angelina's here. Hello. I think you're a new name to me. Katrina, welcome. Alyssa, Amanda, Amy. Nice. Okay, we have a party going now. So let's start with this one. Whether you guys are new to me or you've been following my work for a little while, I don't want you to believe a damn word I say. Not a word. I don't want you to believe a damn word I say, because what I want you to do is start turning on and up your intuition and listening to your radar to start sorting through all of the different levels and layers of information that is out there. Because unless we start really working on our ability to surf through all of the different layers of frequencies and distortions and communication, it's going to be very difficult for us to ever understand what channels, what frequencies we need to follow, and which ones we need to say, you need to step out of my field. This is the same when it comes to starting to work with all of these different ET races. At this time, and I haven't done a most recent count, but the last time I wrote all of the different races down that I was working with, I was something at like 84 different ones that I can channel and I have been a bridge for humans on this earth plane. That's a lot more than just hearing about the Lyrans and the Pleiadians and, the Lemurians and the Atlanteans and all of this. We have so many that we're not even aware even exist or even are real. But through meeting all of you guys, every single time we do a new accelerator and new students come through, new collectives present as well, which is absolutely phenomenal. And we're seeing a lot of hybrids come in. When this happens, though, and when some of us are having these experiences, we don't always get excited the first time it happens, because a lot of these beings just go pop out of nowhere, and all of a sudden they're standing at the end of our bed, or they're right in front of us when we're about to be in an accident, or we're in a dream state and all of a sudden we wake up and we see light figures and we feel like we can't move. Some of you guys in this group have been abduction experiencers. Some of you guys have been in the space where you have caught little visuals in meditations, things like this. And not all of these ETs appear beautiful in the way that we see beauty as humans. Not all of them appear physically like we would want to be friends with them. Some of them have quite an intimidating posture or energy about them. And so sometimes instead of going into curiosity, we go into fear. And I find this is the most frequent issue within my clients and the people I've worked with, is that instead of going into curiosity, they shut down and immediately go into fear because we don't understand it. We don't know what it looks like. We're going, who the heck is this? Why do they have like 17 eyes? Like, things just don't appear to us as normal because we're not used to them how we are the things that are on this earth plane. And so a lot of the times we start creating something called a false reality. We see how something looks and we assign a story to it without falling in love with their nature and figuring out who they are. I'm going to give you guys a really real world example of this. So I grew up in an Anglo-Saxon home where my parents were both religious and my grandparents even more so. And I had one friend. We grew up in a town here in Alberta that's called Sherwood Park, but the joke was we called it Sure White Park because at that time there was pretty much nobody who had any other color of skin other than white. Well, when I went to school, we eventually had one black family move in, and I became good friends with the young girl. Her name was Susie. And the one day, Susie came over to my house, and she and I were playing, and then my grandfather came over. And my grandfather wouldn't let her come upstairs. And so when I came upstairs to get a snack, Susie was coming with me. He's like, no, she has to go to the basement. Systemic racism, right? Like he grew up in this. It was normal to him and he just didn't think to ask the right questions, or he was just bigoted. I don't know. He was kind of an ass. Anyways, what happened after that is my parents and my grandparents, it started instilling a fear in me of everybody who wasn't like us. And so when I eventually got a little bit older, my parents took me to the next city. I was going through the mall and we were definitely the minority. Everybody in there was colored skin. I mean, we had people from Indian descent, we have Aboriginal people, we had African American people, we like all of these different races together in this mixing pot. And my reaction as a 10-year-old girl was like, oh my God, I'm going to die because of all of the bigoted things my parents and my grandparents had ingrained into my system. Because they didn't look quite like me, I didn't understand that I could go beyond what I saw and go to the nature. I'm telling you guys this story because whether you have experienced that as a human or not, many of you guys are experiencing that when it comes to looking at these ETs. You're looking at a body or maybe a fragment of and going, oh, because you don't understand it, and maybe it scares you because it doesn't look like us. One of the number one reasons majority of people have not been, and especially when they want to channel, not been able to go in and actually start getting true channels from these beings is because they're expecting them to look like people. They're expecting the Pleiadians to look like us. They're expecting the Arcturians to kind of look a little bit humanoid, and they don't. And so it sets off alarm bells still in so many different humans at this time that we push those visuals away and assign a fear factor to it. So that is one thing that happens. If you guys would like a really good trigger on this, I think it was National Geographic did a whole symposium of photos that was close-up of insect faces. I would highly recommend going and looking at that and doing some clearing until you're at the point where they no longer get under your skin. Like that's a really good one to go do because so many of the species out there look nothing like us. And when things don't make sense in our brain, we have a hard time getting past the initial visual barrier to start understanding the nature. Okay, so the next thing I want to say is that beyond just how they look to us, sometimes we have an idea of how they feel. There are a number of big name, I'm going to say thought leaders, channelers at this time out on the internet that are telling people all sorts of interesting things about, for example, Alpha Draconians and reptilians and the Greys. They are implanting stories and ideologies and theories from their own lens and from their own experience rather than actually going through and understanding the nature of the singular being they were working with. And so the next thing I want to give to you guys is that within all of these different races, there are individuals. And the individuals operate similar to how we do, although most of these collectives have a much better code of conduct when it comes to community frequencies than we do as humans. But they will have individual natures as much as we will. So if I put all 5,100 something of us that are in this group in a circle, and I said, okay, here's the code of conduct. Nobody is allowed to cut each other down, name call, be mean, purposefully try to hurt. If we get triggered, well, there's something to look at. But all of us, even though we all hold that ideal as a collective, because that's a collective level truth, are going to have individual level truths and experiences and ways of operating. And so for us to say, well, all of the reptilians are bad, or all of the demonics are bad and evil and doing X, Y, and Z things, that is an absolute fallacy. Okay, so I'm going to tell you guys maybe a triggering story. One of the very first collectives that came forward into my world shortly after I started channeling were the demonics. And most people will be like, oh my God, Satan, get out of here. Like holy water, cleansing the place. And I'm like, this is interesting. Why are you guys stepping forward like this? And at the time, my first reaction was fear, because when I saw their posturing and the intensity that they bring in their frequency, at first I was going, oh my gosh, I think I'm in trouble. Maybe this is an attack. What's going to happen to me? But when I stepped back and I cleared that layer of fear and I took that emotional response out of my body, I had a demonic ambassador come forward and tell me about the enslavement that he and his people had been in, holding particular religious grids in place for a period of time, and how now they were coming out of that position, and it was going to be really relevant to teach many other different healers how to portal these guys back out so that they could unhook from human bodies. A nefarious being who people have painted as like absolutely awful, driving these attacks and things like this, stepped forward and said, we have stepped out of this contract. We are reclaiming our sovereignty. We need help. So things aren't always as they appear. And so this is what I really want you guys to wrap your heads around, is that we are going to have all sorts of people with all sorts of beliefs. Even in this group, there's, 5,000 of us. There are so many different belief systems that are going to come forward, but things aren't always as they appear. And if we as an individual haven't taken the time to step back and strip away our first emotional jolt and look at the actual nature and the truth of the situation in that moment, we are doing that situation or that being or that connection a big disservice. Okay, so this is something I'm going to really work with you guys on over the course of the accelerator, because truly there is nothing to fear working with any of these collectives. There is a way to honor their nature. So they are deciding who these beings are and what they're like without necessarily getting to know them and lumping them into one group. Correct. That is exactly what it is, Violet. They're saying all the reptilians are like this, all of the alpha draconians are like that, all of the tall grays are like this, right? They're putting them into these categories of, what that collective is doing. Here's another story. I have an Alpha Draconian ambassador that comes forward on my team when people are dealing with systemic issues in their own field. He doesn't work for the dark grid agendas that are going on at some times. He's not in there, but that's his body. And he steps forward and he shows me how to take them out of certain grids to liberate their soul. He shows me how to unplug them from these different things when they have been maybe following different pantheons of religion or plugged into certain agendas where the words that are being shared aren't necessarily the tone and the information that's just on the other side of it. He's given me the codes for that. Again, we can't put everybody in one container. So in the same way, we can't say all white people are like this and all black people are like this and all Indians are like this. We can't say all African or Arcturians are like this. All Alpha Draconians are like this. We can't do that. We have to go, what is their nature? All right. So here's the next piece. Because everything has a nature and a lensing and experience, some beings, some individuals are going to choose to partake or maybe are enslaved to partake in particular events or to carry out certain missions, or perhaps are on a big bandwagon because they're cheering on a certain leader and something they think they want to come true. But if that is their lensing and their experience, and that is all they know at that time, and their perception has not been opened, and that is what they are indoctrinated and they are conditioned to, how would they do anything differently? And so we have to understand, in the same way, if any of us as healers was to go and work with a young child who at a very young age became or was in a household with tons and tons of abuse, if I go take that child and they're now 17 years old and I expect them to just be this sovereign being because they are free and to understand how to operate and move in the world and to have open perceptions, oh man, I've got another thing coming. They have an operating system. And we've all learned this. Like, let me know in the chat if you've tried this. If I go and try and impress my point of view on somebody and I say, you're wrong, this isn't the way it operates, you need to change what you're doing right now, don't do X, Y, and Z because it's wrecking your soul and depressing humanity, how well does that go over? Like, seriously, how well are our friends and families taking these different things that many of us are thinking, seeing, feeling during this shift? How well are many of our family members processing our points of view about what we're seeing happening with COVID and the vaccines and governments and all of these things? Not well. And if we try and push it into their field, guess what they do? They push it back. And so we can't walk up to a new collective and be like, you have to love and light the entire universe. Okay, thanks, bye. Right? Like, that's not how it works. But if I have a being that is open to presenting and stepping forward to somebody like me, I'm going to have an open opportunity to have a conversation, to show them a new possibility. And that is what I hope to give you guys over the coming weeks here in this community and as we go through the accelerator. Okay. Yes, Violet's just sharing, I wouldn't want the aliens to think all humans are violent and bad just because they met one or two who are, right? None of us want to be painted as a generalization. Neither do they. So everywhere we have bought into that, we need to destroy and uncreate at all times a gazillion, right, wrong, good, bad, pop back, all nine shores and beyonds. And we need to write a new story from this moment forward. We have to stop lumping things into one category and start doing things at a grassroots level. All right. So here's the next piece of this. Much of our media has created a space where we have made a systemic racism towards ETs. Like, look at the ways they are presented in majority of the movies. They're evil, they're blood-sucking, they're killers, they've got like massive teeth, they are ripping people apart, right? Like, we have all of these aliens coming to destroy the world and bomb and blow shit up. There is a patterning to what's coming through in the media. And so we also need to step back from this because we know that things are not always as they seem to be. And quite often what we see is that when people are afraid of things or they get a thread of truth on them, they build a false reality on it based on what they think could happen based on a small visual. And so for all of us that have looked at these movies and gone, ugh, we need to also step back and go, okay, I need to discharge these feelings out of my field. And what if I was willing to come to the table with all of these as an equal? I would really love for all of you guys to also see that anybody on your guide or communication team that you will step into working with does not see you as below them. They see you as a part of a circle. You are a community and a connection. This is really important. Angelina's just asking, would they know who is bad or good? Oh yes, they read natures faster than we do because depending on the collective, they all use different dimensions and frequencies and they're all biased in their own ways, but they read the bigger picture a lot quicker than we do, most of them. Welcome, Tracy. Glad to have you. Amy's asking me, what is your connection to the Ashtar Command or Galactic Federation? I do not resonate with anything from the Ashtar Command. as far as I have been able to channel and track, it is a false light grid, and another one of those ones that takes spiritual people who are awakening and plugs them into another battery pack situation. One of the ways you will know is that any of these collectives who are coming forward, or beings that are coming forward that are like, you have to do this now, those are not part of the interstellium alliances, where all of the collectives like the Pleiadians, both Nordic and Taigetans, the Lyrans, the Syrians, all of these are coming together and they share information. They are not in a force-fed situation. So the Galactic Federation. So what most people talk about being the Galactic Federation here on this planet, there is also a false light grid on that, but there is an interstellium alliance that is very similar to it, but most people are not channeling or tracking that one because of their biases and the ways they want the information to turn out. I have a lot of points of view I could share on that one, but I don't want to go too far down that road at this time. Okay. Yeah, Leslie's just sharing that's definitely how I felt when I met a xenomorph. Yeah, and they are so cool to work with, right? Like, yeah, the first time you meet one face to face and they're right there in your awareness and they show them or their full body frequency to you, or their full light body to you, you're like, oh my God. You feel like kind of pale in existence, but once you guys learn to access more of your levels of you, it won't shake you quite so bad. Okay, so we talked about the media, we talked about nature, we talked about not painting them all with the same brush. What about, are there actually collectives who are nefarious? Are there actually ones out there who have these more negative agendas and are not maybe having humans' best interests at heart? And my answer to that is yes, and they're not the only ones present, and this has been going on before time was time and humans were humans. These beings have been present long before we were. And what they are against is the sharing and transiting of information, because they do not like power scales to tip. And so it's not that they actually want to wipe out races. It's not that they're here using everybody and driving them and herding them like cattle. It's not that they're trying to turn all the humans into cyborgs and fry their brains. It's that if they keep the haze here, information doesn't transit as quickly into the other collectives that are not on this Earth plane but are on different planetary and stellium belts. And so it's in their interests right now to try and hold that in place. There are collectives that are a little bit more of what I would lovingly call a pain in the ass. And so, for example, the white lighters. The white lighters are absolutely obnoxious. They shapeshift. They will show up sometimes. This one drives me nuts. Those of you guys that are calling in like the angels for protection and stuff, listen, you better be able to track exactly who you're calling in when you do that, because a lot of what happens when we're calling in protection, it's because we feel weak. And when we are in that moment where we're like, I don't feel safe in my body, I don't feel safe in this scenario, and we go and call in a being that we think is above us, sometimes we will hook into a false light grid, something like the white lighters, and we will get a shape-shifting nefarious being that keeps us hooked in and off of our, what we call our axis. They'll keep us off of our axis and from really harnessing our own abilities. And so there is beings that do this, but there is a counterbalance to all of this. To all of this, the only thing any of you guys need for protection or to transit this world in its entirety is discernment and self-awareness. That's it. No magic wands. You don't even need sage. Like, you don't need to be able to channel full time. It's just discernment and the ability to check inwards and go, okay, how do I feel in this moment? What's the truth about this situation for me right now from this lensing? All right, I'm choosing to come out of this interaction, step out, right? That's it. We don't need to be scared of any of them. A lot of times once we can see that they're there and we understand that they're there, and when I say see, I don't just visually mean see, I mean like hear, feel, all of our intuitive senses. Once we can call that out, puts a pause on everything, okay? All right, so we do have some nefarious beings. However, I will tell you that the people they mess with most are the ones that are constantly spinning in drama. Of course, right? Because the ones who are spinning in drama are constantly pulling energy from other humans and don't know how to internally generate energy here and stay on their axis. And so when they are constantly in these tug of wars energetically, when they are constantly cutting other people down or bouncing back and forth, these are the ones that they bug the most. And so one of the tools I teach all my students right away is personal energy management. This is one of the absolute keys. Okay. Do we actually see spirits or do we see info? Angelina, typically you guys are going to see a hologram, which is a projected 6th and 7th dimensional frequency. You're typically not going to see the full embodiment. They will send a hologram. Usually, like, we don't really have any full embodied ETs here. They're either in holographic or walk-in form inside human avatars. So we don't really have them like showing up in that way, but they will project through telepathy, right, coming through our 6th and 7th dimensional lenses, their shape, their form, their colors, their textures. Okay, Violet is asking me if I can talk about how to get them to not show up when we're sleeping or showering. Okay. So some of you guys have expressed that you have had like different beings show up at the end of your bed, or you've been in the shower and all of a sudden somebody pops into your periphery, or you feel like you're being watched at certain times, or you're driving. We need to look at who is showing up, because sometimes this might be really strange for some of you guys, and for some of you, you might go, oh my God, right? Some of you guys, they're going to be levels of you that are showing up to try and get your attention, to get you back on track and into your mission. Like, go, hey human, wake up. You got to come out of this track. Like, it's time to go. You'll shake yourself. So then we also have another set of beings that we call the Watchers. And the Watchers, some of you guys will have experienced, they're like tall, they always appear in a man-like form. They're like tall men. They usually show up in like suits. They usually look fairly buff without being like, oh, hulky. And they will often just stand there and like they're looking at you. What they're doing is they're reading information off of your field to report back to whomever. And so they're not there to harm or to hurt you. You can tell them to F off if you want to. Chances are, though, if you are somebody who's experiencing this frequently in your home, it's not a matter of telling them to go away. It's a matter of checking into why you're being watched. Most beings, when you're being watched, or those of you that are abduction experiencers, is because you have volunteered to do that on a soul level when you were not in this conscious human form, and you said, okay, I'm going to go in there every once in a while, come in, get the information off of my body, off of these implants, off of these transponders. I'm going to give you guys the data you're looking for. And so what we don't realize for most of us is when these experiences are happening, we signed up for them. At any time in your human experience, once you get conscious to that, you can destroy and uncreate that contract so it stops happening. But to me, if you signed up for that, that means there's a very high level conscious level of you that is able to look at all of that data as well. And likely you might be part of the science teams or the watching teams that are putting these different concepts together and watching on how evolution is unfolding. It's actually probably one of your superpowers and gifts. But because of the media, because of the way we've been looking at this, because of our projections and perceptions about, pain or these little memories, we see it as trauma. So it's not the same as working with like disincarnated humans, like humans who have passed over, ghosties who are gemming in your space. You can tell them to buzz off and put boundaries up. With this, you can't. You are contracted. And so we have to look at that contract and track why. Was it made out of consciousness? Was it made out of unconsciousness? Because if it was, then there are other grids we have to collapse. And we have to look at the perception of trauma, because the perception of trauma is really fascinating. You and I could go through the exact same experience, and you might register it as trauma and I might register it as excitement, right? So your viewpoint on the events are going to be relative to your upbringing, how you see these other beings, and what your body remembers shocking back into this space. And that is a very individual thing that we have to look at for each human that goes through it. I know this is a really big subject, so we can talk about that again another day. It does explain why they don't go away. And a lot of people just want to put boundaries around their house. They want to do the grids. They want to wear their crystals. They want to sage the place, and they're like, get out of my space. But you guys, if it is true that we are more than what this human existence has told us we are, if it is true that we are these starseeds and we have these timelines and these lifetimes in other places, then it is also true that a higher consciousness than what we are currently accessing here in this haze put much of this together. And if that's also true, that we put much of this together and that we came in here with a specific mission and purpose to being connected to everything that's going on in this timeline, it also stands to reason that a very simple fear wouldn't get in our way of continuing to have those wake-up calls so that we get back into who we are. So in a lot of ways, what I like to try and help my students with is eliminating all of those perceptions and the conditionings we've walked through to open up to what else is possible so that we can truly come home to who we are on all levels and all layers. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that trauma, because many people have had a hormonal neurological response to the trauma, or they've come back with scars, or they've come back with markings on their bodies. Again, we need to look at the relativity of how these people have perceived the event and what their memories do, and sometimes we need to track into it and fill in the gap. We've all done this, where we've had something happen in our life or we've been given a small amount of information and then our brain goes, oh my gosh, so this is the rest of what happened, when we didn't really experience it. And so when we have had these events, what we need to do is start tracking into what was actually the filler and what did I make up, and then start destroying and uncreating that. Physically, when we are having these different things happen, sometimes it's because we have something called tech in the body. And tech is like a holographic element that is made up of certain frequencies that will either be influencing a different level of self or could be receiving information from outside of self. So sometimes we need to track through the tech to figure out what's going on. If they volunteered and we have been experiencing this as a trauma, it's likely, this is going to sound so bizarre, and don't take this as a projection if it's not your reality, but a lot of times these people, the trauma isn't actually that the event happened, it's that they couldn't remember that they were with their people from home. Isn't that crazy? They're more upset when we actually get to the root of it that they couldn't remember their people and feel that connection they've been longing for than what their physical body is actually experiencing. So this is something, again, we have to track and see what's actually the reality here. All right. So some of these beings could be us from future or other timelines. Yes, they can. Sometimes you guys are thinking you're seeing these extra ETs, but they're actually just versions of you. How crazy is that? Ashley, that's perfect. Let's talk about that next. She said, how to discern a being's intention, and can they sense our emotions when they interact with us? Yes, they can absolutely sense your emotions. And so this is where having that emotional intelligence and the ability to override old stimulant patterns and really form what truth is to each situation is key. But when a being steps forward, like when somebody comes into your periphery and you're like, I know I'm being watched, there's a being at the end of my bed, I'm having this download come in, I just had this visual, the best thing you can do, this is so complicated, you guys write this down, the best thing you can do is just say out loud, hey, what's up? That's it. Like, just, hey, what's up? Because as soon as you say, I'm willing to communicate with you without going, I'm going to protect myself, I am strong, I'm a child of the light, I am, instead of going into all that, it's just, hey, who are you? What's up? Let's have a conversation. Let's assess the situation. Sometimes if you're brand new, you're going to not download any information. You're going to feel like you can't hear them, like you can't get the data yet. That'll come. But when you guys are willing to have a conversation, they will start downloading light code to you, and your body will either go, huh, yeah, There's something to this. I need to have curiosity in this situation. So that's my key. If you go in and you are curious, likely there's something for you to transit and explore. If you are in there and you know when this used to happen to me all the time. You know when you're walking down the street and you have that like ugh feeling like the person walking behind you doesn't have good intent? You can feel it. You guys know when this happens. Or you're in the mall and somebody catches your eye the wrong way and you're like, it just doesn't feel good. It'll feel the exact same way with ETs. Your body knows and has a very strong radar. It's just you have to teach yourself to understand the cues. And so just pay attention to that because your body is giving you the messages all the time as to what we should be curious about and what we need to be like, my discernment radar needs to be way the heck up. Even with the ETs who step forward, who are like, give me that feeling. Once I clear that, I welcome them forward and I go, hey, I am willing to hear you out here. What's up? What are you presenting at this time? And why are you in my space? Like, what are you bringing to the table right in this moment? If they didn't want me to know I was there, they just leave, right? Because once they are there and I recognize it, the gig's up. And it's going to be the exact same for all of you. But here's what I want to leave you with. Majority of the beings you guys are going to interact with on this earth plane are not nefarious. They are here because they have the codes and the contacts. They're going to help you guys shift this earth forward. Majority of the beings you are going to meet, you said when you were on the other side, please come into my periphery as soon as you feel this change take place. Most of you guys are also going to come into contact with layers and levels of you over the coming months ahead. And so I would be, every time somebody is coming forward, truth testing, truth, is this a layer of me? Is this my avatar or my light body running in another planetary interstellium belt, etc.? Because a lot of the times we think it's one of our guides, but it's actually us working with us from another dimension. All right, lots of love, you guys. We'll see you in the next one.